I'm just going to start by saying thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your work. And I'm deeply honored and thankful to be able to ask you these questions and be able to share your answers with so many parents who are in search and in need of this information. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We're just going to hit it off. In the book of The Danish Way of Parenting, you discuss the importance of fostering happiness and in children. What do you think are like some specific practices you recommend to parents to cultivate either in the family or in their children in order to have that notion of happiness? Or how does happiness truly look like?
I think there's a lot of different elements that make up happiness, and happiness is a broad term. I would say more, let's say, well-being and thriving, and I think probably the first step would be to relax a little bit, because I think a lot of parents are very pressured and feel very stressed about doing more and more and more. And if I look at sort of some of the differences in Denmark and other cultures, I think one of the reasons why they are happier is because they have less demands, I would say, and so maybe can enjoy being a parent more. Yeah, and this obviously transfers over to the child.
Yeah, because the mental health of parents can be felt like throughout the household. So what does hygge mean in terms of parenting? Because it's a concept, it's now a trend, right? We like to see it on coffee shops, but it's so much deeper than that. And tell us, what is it all about?
Yes, I mean, when the Danish Way of Parenting came out, hygge exploded. Sometimes I thought I should have called it the hygge way of parenting because it was really... but I think the way that people interpret hygge is... it's a little... People see it almost more of a superficial thing, like candles and warm blankets and having tea or coffee, these kinds of things. And this is hygge, but that's kind of the surface level. And I think that to understand how hygge affects us, our happiness levels, and also in a family, it's much more a psychological thing.
Okay.
For Danes, it's something they do naturally. So they're born with hygge. You don't hear a sentence in Denmark almost without something being hygge, hyggelig. So they kind of know what the rules are, let's say, if there's some ingrained rules to hygge. For non-Danes, I think we have to work at it. So you have to imagine that it's a little bit like a psychological space that you carve out with your family. And in this space, just like you take off your hat or jacket or shoes to go into a room, you take off your negativity, your stress, complaining, and you just focus on the here and now. Okay. And I know that maybe sounds easy, but it actually takes a little bit of practice and I think effort to make it work. But one of the best ways I describe it is, you've heard of mindfulness.
Yes.
Okay. We know that mindfulness is tied to well-being, right? Being present in the moment, freeing our thoughts, etc. So I feel like hygge is kind of an evolution of mindfulness. Okay. It's we-fulness.
Okay, yeah. Oh.
So it's being together with the people you love in in the moment.
In the moment.
And I think that's the best way to describe it.
This popped in my head, this question. What are some expectations Danish parents have of their children or not have of their children that the rest of the world has or doesn't have? Like in terms of behavior or in terms of academics or in terms of just children in general?
I think there's a lot less pressure, both on parents and on children. There's a lot more space given to kids to play, for example. So it's interesting. In other countries where you see a decline in play, free play, we see an increase in anxiety. Yeah. So this has just been widely studied over the last 50 years. We see them in parallel. And it's in Denmark, something like free play is considered almost a right of the child. It's like their right to have free play. It's the most important thing they can engage in.
Okay.
And this is because they believe that the child is very competent and that they are sort of, they're teaching themselves through play. And I think that this space to believe in the child and to believe in their competence, it also reduces stress for everyone. And what's interesting is if you look at, in America, we are kind of obsessed with measurements.
Yeah.
Right? It's got to be the best.
Yeah.
But here's a country that for 40 years in a row, it's the happiest country in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
okay.
We
need to borrow some of
maybe the free play thing is good.
It's working.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that here too, because we are just scheduling our kids into classes, into, you name it, ballet, robotics, martial arts, just to get our children to do something, right? Because play is not, apparently, we are taught that it's just play.
Yep.
And it's what they can do, just play the whole day. There's nothing constructive of that. So I think it's really important that we send out the message that play is not just as important as work, but more important than what we think is truly important.
And it's this idea again of, I think we underestimate how much it means to let a child be. Rather than do. And it's interesting because you hear a lot of parenting experts and psychologists talking about this now. But here we have a country that's actually doing it. And look at the results. It's not that they're not ambitious. It's not that they're not, that you can't still be successful. It's just, so there's a term in Danish which is at hvile i sig selv. And it means to rest well within yourself. And it's a highly coveted characteristic in Denmark. And free play helps create this, because the idea is that whether you walk on the moon or you walk on a beach, you rest well within yourself. And this is sort of real happiness.
How do you see these concepts of hygge and what you just said before into schools, for example? How do they translate?
Well, there's actually some hygge rooms. Some schools actually have hygge rooms.
Really?
It's part of the education. There's a big focus on absolutely children have to have play.
Okay.
And this goes all the way up until the older ages. A lot of outdoor play, a lot of nature play. I don't know if you've heard of forest kindergartens.
Yes.
Okay, so it's really funny. This is shocking to some people that when they're smaller, some children just are outside all day long. Climbing trees, playing near fjords, sharpening knives. Because again, they're learning a lot of these skills that we can't measure, but that later in life give you the kind of stability
and value
to learn all the other things. It's not that you can't learn other things later. And what we have in America, for example, is something called the hurried child syndrome, which is on the rise. Maybe you've talked about or heard about it.
Heard about it.
And this is coming directly from our overprogramming, wanting to adultify children too young. It's not in their developmental stage. And this creates anxiety. And whereas children will learn, they'll all learn by a certain age. But the child that is allowed to learn at their pace is going to be much more emotionally stable.
And healthy.
Exactly. But it's just, we have to get past, if you can't measure it, it's not good.
Valuable.
Exactly.
Speaking of teaching or training, I ask this question to all of my interviews. Sleep is a very hot topic in most cultures, and it's starting to become here in Romania as well. Specifically sleep training, right? Because we've got information from decades ago that says that we need to teach our children how to sleep, we need to sleep train them. We're talking about cried out, Ferber, which are the most famous, but then you have just misattuning and trying not to answer to our kid because the book says you need to timed methods, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just zone out, come back, not really be engaged into comforting so they don't get dependent on us for us to, so they can self-soothe and other stuff. How does the Danish way sees sleep and co-sleeping also?
Well, definitely not as regimented. I think there's much more focus on getting a bit of routine, structure in the day, so that you can sort of predict more what's going to happen, and the child can predict more what's going to happen. This makes them feel safer, and I think it's more about being able to read the cues of sleep. Right. So seeing when they show signs of sleepiness. Yeah. And also, I mean, one of the fundamental differences or observations I've made of the Danish culture is that they see children as extremely competent from the time they're babies. And that they have a voice and that they are trying to communicate, and they really try hard to understand what they're communicating. And I think this is also true in their cries. So not all cries are the same.
Yep.
And you may not need to pick them up. They may just need a touch on the foot, or to turn over in the bed. So it's also about being more in tune with with what they're communicating. But sometimes this also comes back to us. And if we're stressed as the mom or the dad, totally exhausted out of our minds, then we're probably not going to be as good at responding. And this is when it's good to get help. It's good to have support and not try to do everything on your own. Yeah. Because the more your stress reduces, it passes over.
Yeah, with everyone. What advice would you give to parents, for example, who are overwhelmed by societal expectations of well-behaved children and highly academic children? Because we all have that image of the child melting down in the supermarket, right? And different cultures respond different ways, and different ways of parenting respond differently to a child melting down and just not being able to cope with their feelings. How do the Danish people respond to a child's meltdown?
First of all, it's very important that you, in your mind, with your family, you have what's right for you. Because I think everybody has a right way, and we have a lot of pressure from our culture, from our peers, from other parents. So it's really important to know what your sort of big lines of parenting are. What do I believe is right? And if that's, I want to be respectful to my child, for example, then, if they're not behaving the right way in the supermarket, but you want to prioritize your relationship, then what's more important? What other people think, or your relationship? And that you have a respectful one with your child. And interesting, actually, this is a funny example that I just saw a couple of months ago. I think the Danish approach, first of all, is also, again, they're listening. I find they have more patience, and they're listening more for what their children are actually communicating. And very often our sort of immediate, like, don't do that, stop, is like almost a habit. Yeah. It's a cultural default setting. It's a reaction. Sometimes it's what our parents said, so we're saying it, we don't think about it. And what's interesting is when you're aware of that, and you make an effort, like, okay, how else can I see this situation? It's amazing how many other options there are which can prevent meltdowns. So I can tell you this example. I was in a supermarket, and there was a mom with 2 small toddlers. She was totally exhausted. And she was letting them help her put the groceries on. One was in a stroller and one was standing. And she was being so sweet, and they were helping. And then one of the little toddlers goes around to the end and starts climbing up on the thing. And I thought, oh no, okay, this is it. This is going to be meltdown, right? I'm seeing it here, right? It's going to happen in Denmark. And she goes over and she takes him, and I think, and she picks him up and puts him closer to the belt and says, "Can you reach the butter now?" And he takes the butter and he hands it to her. And she says, "Okay, now the bread." And he takes the bread. So she saw he wanted to help.
Wanted to help, yeah.
Wow. Like, it was such a, like, it was
just
like an
needed 1
illumination
second
for
to
me.
give him more.
1 second to realize he just wanted to help.
Yeah.
And there was no meltdown. Imagine if she had taken him away and said, stop it.
Yeah.
So it's quite it's a powerful thing to take those extra
seconds, moments.
When you can.
Yes, of course, of course. I'm guilty myself of
that.
No,
I mean, nobody's superhuman.
Of course, and then I come back and I think, wow, if you come down pounding at your kid, imagine him just wanting to help. And
that's what was so like, oh my gosh,
and
wow.
then I get goosebumps. What does that child feel inside of them when the parents goes, oh, I told you not to go up or do that. And how many times in a day do we actually do that to our kids? It's just, because I've been caught myself in a few moments like that. And I just pause and ask she's 4.5, so she starts to have words for it. And why did you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? And she's like, because, and she gives me the reason. And then I just I realize it had nothing to do with what I thought she wanted to do, but she had a completely different image of herself or of the situation. And at the end of the day, she just wants to help or be involved.
Yes.
And just be part of
yes.
it.
And I think the more, sorry to interrupt you, but like also this idea of hygge and play, with everyday activities like cooking and chores and things like that, I find that they're really big on including kids from when they're toddlers.
Okay.
Because this is also, for a toddler, they love to be with you, and it's work is playful for them. So the more you include them earlier on, the easier it is also to see these moments as
moments of connection and just chores.
Yes, and that children are also empathic and they do want to help.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of small things that help just to be aware of, and then that we're not superhuman, and it's also important to be authentic but when I've had those experiences to change, it's a good feeling.
How can parents encourage open communication and emotional expression in a place where, societal expectations, and in our society it's called respect, right? If you don't talk back to a parent, it's called respect. And if you talk back to the parent, it's called disrespect. Or to teachers or to authorities in general. And I see now older generations saying, oh, kids today are more disrespectful than ever. And if you ask them why, because, they're answering, they're putting out their opinions, they're starting not to say yes to whatever their parents or grandparents start to say. Is it the same in Danish cultures?
No, it's so there's something called power distance. And in every culture has a different level of power distance. I'm not sure what it is in Romania, but in America, that means what's the distance between like a teacher or a parent and a child, for example, or a boss and a subordinate, or these kind of power levels. In Denmark, the power distance is very low. So again, parents see children as incredibly competent. Children are interviewed often on the news. Their voice is considered important. And teachers go by their first names.
Okay.
So, but the interesting thing I find in Denmark is that also in the teen years, they're so respectful. They don't seem to have the same issues that I see so many places. And I am 100% convinced it's because from early on, they are treated as human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, really, like sometimes the way children are treated is, and then they grow up and then we expect them to respect us. But it's a cycle that comes back to you.
We haven't given them their respect.
Yes.
And they don't know what respect looks like, because I feel like we need to model more than we talk. Right? So if you expect your child to treat you respectfully or speak to you in a respectful manner, you need to do the same. Not because you're a parent and you can just ignore them or just dismiss them. then they're obviously going to dismiss. And if you're going to continue doing that, then you have to be up to being dismissed by your kid.
Absolutely. And this is something that I think is just missed because this is passed on in our culture, that we're supposed to be the one in power, in control, and in charge. And I think people feel threatened by the idea of this sort of more equality. And it's not permissive parenting. It's having boundaries, but it's just seeing children as having their own, you know, integrity. So they have something called equal dignity in Danish. And it's basically seeing, respecting a child's dignity. And think about, how would you feel if you were treated that way, if you were talked to that way, if you were hit, or all the other things, right? How it would, I mean, it's a good question to ask. And so I always say, teach respect, be respectful, and you will be respected. Yeah.
And respect, I don't think you can teach. I think you just inspire, to be honest.
Yeah. And then I also think there's something about knowing what the different phases are. So, for example, toddlers in Denmark, I always noticed that they didn't have as much, they don't have as many meltdowns. This was an example in the supermarket. But then I learned they don't call it the terrible twos. They call it trods-eller, which means the boundary pushing age. So when they are pushing boundaries, being disrespectful, they see it as healthy. This is part of their growth. This is how they learn. Totally different way to see it.
The perspectives change.
And then you treat them differently.
Because if you're calling them terrible twos, you're taking it personally because it's terrible for you as a parent, right? Or if you're calling it a phase where they're going to do something and you're just there to, you know, contain, offer space, offer guidance. I find that with two terms in Romania. We call children around 2, 3, you know, naughty. And in Romanian is obraznik. You're like defying, trying to push limits. Or if you call them tenacious, same behavior, different perspective.
Totally.
Same behavior. And I try to teach this parents. Imagine not the adult, which it's a term we don't use because we call them tenacious, right? And driven. And but we call them kids, same attitude, same behaviors, but we use different terms. And I feel like if we just try to change a little bit perspective, it's gonna do us a big favor as parents and the children as well.
And interestingly, in Denmark, also in the schools, they have a huge focus on this reframing, they call it. And they teach it to the parents, they teach it to the teachers, and they try to avoid using negative, like they're trained to focus on the positive behavior rather than, because this ultimately can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Of course.
Right? So the naughty boy who's actually just showing healthy, tenacious behavior becomes more naughty.
Of course, because you're trying to use all types of strategies or trying to lower putting the pressure on the kid, then it's just gonna backfire, right? If there's one message you would like to send to the Romanian population out there, or to, you know, parents as they are, what would you tell them? What would you say to them?
I think I would go back to the what we talked about earlier, and I feel like at the base of it all, it's teach respect, be respectful, and you will be respected.
Thank you so much for everything. I love it, and I cannot wait for tomorrow.
Thank you.
There's so much